everybody. My name is Joanne Shango, and I am the head of school at the Montessori School Rochester in Rochester Hills, Michigan. I'm here with you today to offer some parenting support and tips for raising our children, particularly now in time of crisis. We had a great discussion yesterday regarding positive parenting, and we went over a variety of tips that will help you implement positive parenting strategies in your home, which ultimately will lead to a more peaceful home life that is productive for both you and your children. With the practice of implementing those tips and guidelines into your home and into your communication strategies with your children, you're going to find that handling challenging or difficult situations becomes more effective. It's not that they won't occur, because they will. It's that you'll be more effective, more capable, more patient, and more calm in handling the situations. And what might have gone on for 2 hours, 10 times a day, may be reduced to 10 minutes, one time a day, or just a couple of times a week, because your children are also developing strategies that keep them engaged, occupied, and given the opportunities to reach their full potential in a way that is fitting for who they are as little humans. After yesterday's talk, and it was very exciting to see that it's reached over 2,700 people, which is very exciting, and I hope it was beneficial to everybody. We did receive a few questions for more details in regards to specific items. One of the items that was discussed or would like to be discussed is right now in COVID, as we are still under a stay-at-home order, at least here in Michigan, and around the world in many places still, is how do you balance helping and aiding your child and their teacher in their homework or their schoolwork at this point? It's not really homework. How do we aid them when we have multiple children, and particularly if we have younger children that don't have that work to be doing and they are busy? So how do we balance that? And there's a lot of strategies that you can take into consideration, but I think the first thing we want to do is consider, what is the goal? What are the most important things that are going on in your life? What is the goal of the distance learning program that your children are working on? And what is your goal for them to reach the end of this school year? Or for some, if you're in another part of the world, it might be the start of your school year. But what are the goals to get through this current semester or quarter for your children? When you figure out what those goals are, then you can start to implement and put a plan into place. And scheduling is really important for that. I know that here at the Montessori School Rochester, what we've done is offer a daily Zoom classroom for the entire class, up to 30 children in the preschool classes, 15 in the elementary classes, and for the toddler communities as well. And that 2.5 hours daily is to reach the children. Our goals are to give them support and give them activities, or work as they call it, to keep them engaged in their explorations of how the world works and how they work in the world. For our older children, like our kindergartners and our elementary students, there is a strong academic content to it. However, we do understand that these 2 months in the long scheme of things of their education are not going to make or break them. It is really most important to think of their social and emotional needs, how they're reacting to the distance learning program, how they're reacting to life at home full-time with mom, dad, whoever their caregivers are, in your unique home environments, and paying respect and even tribute to that, and understanding what the school's goals are, and then what are your goals and your children's goals. So as we set it up, our goal was to maintain a connection and to create a home school connection that provides support for the families and provides engagement for the children. There are activities that they were working on that they want to continue to pursue, and we wanted to be able to provide that for them. However, what we're really looking for more than anything else is that these children stay healthy and happy and eager and still maintain that thirst for knowledge and for exploration. That can happen in our Zoom classrooms daily, but it can also happen by going outside. It can happen by exploring the world, finding creative ways to reach some of the academic content for the older children without it being an unnecessary chore or a stress-filled environment. When it's a stress-filled environment, any work that they're completing probably isn't fully registering or digesting. They're not going to gain ownership of that material. So we want to remove those stresses. However, sometimes those stresses come from a sibling that doesn't have work, who is seemingly demanding attention because they don't have that tie to any academic or social work through either the Zoom classrooms or the Google Meets or Schoology or whatever program that your children are working on. And so finding that balance and making a distinction between what one child's needs are, capabilities are, as well as what the other child's needs and capabilities are during what you might consider your school day. You might want to create a schedule so that the times that they're spending on their schoolwork for the children that have a responsibility to their schoolwork, find a schedule that is separate from the needs of your younger child. So if it's while they're napping, then you do 2 hours of schoolwork during that nap time. It might be, if you're lucky, your younger child takes 2 naps, and so you can split it up that way. It might also be that downtime where you might be snuggling with the younger child reading storybooks while the older child is working on their schoolwork, so that we can still create a more peaceful environment. Right now, it's springtime in Michigan, and while it's raining today, the weather is a lot more conducive for spending time outside, and you might want to consider, if your child is not a napper, that younger child that doesn't have the schoolwork is not a napper but needs movement, to move yourself outside with him. Move if you have work, your computer, move that outside with him. Move your mobile office onto a patio chair or a table and set yourself up so that he can run and play. Place your other children right inside from that door so that you can still see them and they know how to reach you if they do need assistance, but creating a space where neither the work of either child isn't compromised, and the work of the young child in running and playing and exploring and talking is still important work. It may not be the work that's assigned by a school teacher or a guide, but it's still really important work, so you want to respect both. So finding those separate spaces that respect each child's needs in that moment is going to benefit everybody. The schedule helps a lot. If you can make designated time schedules, even your youngest child has a strong mastery of language. Our youngest children, whether they are speaking or not, have already absorbed and understand the majority of what you say to them, just as they understand when you ask them, would you like something to eat? They are understanding a lot more in your communication than what they can respond back to you with. So take heart in that, truly believe that, and use your calm and your patience to explain why there are certain limitations during certain times and help them develop a conscience or care or empathy to the child that is needing quiet or concentration or needing you at that time. And I do truly believe that your youngest child understands that. Finding activities, if you do have to stay inside, that will engage them is very beneficial. It may not be schoolwork, but it can be their work, whether it is creating traditional Montessori activities like pouring. Give a child water and 2 cups, and pouring back and forth is going to engage your young toddler for a long period of time, because that's his work. It's mastering a life skill. It could be spooning or scooping, gluing, pasting, trying to master scissors or coloring. These activities of the very young child are important work for them. One of my favorite activities for the young child that I always see them really, really engaged in is a variety of containers that have different types of lids, and just opening and closing those lids, twisting on and off. A basket of 5 or 10 different containers with lids will keep your young child engaged for a considerably long period of time. Another activity that is a great one for really young toddlers that maybe don't have schoolwork is window washing. If you have a squeegee somewhere, check your shower, what you use to clean your shower doors. Or if you don't, then a sponge and a spray bottle. If you don't have a spray bottle, it could be a bucket with water. And give them a window to clean. If you have a large door wall, invite them to clean that window, but show them how. Being able to work that spray bottle, that in and of itself is going to engage a toddler, because that's really difficult work that requires a very high skill level of fine motor coordination that they're developing that they don't have yet. And if you show them how, they're going to be engaged in just learning that mechanism. Once they learn how to spray that bottle, they're going to be spraying that window and wiping the window and spraying the window and wiping the window. I've seen toddlers window washing for 20, 30 minutes at a time. I've watched them return to it multiple times a day, day after day, for an entire school year. It's a really soothing activity. It has water. It is purposeful. They start looking for the dirt and cleaning it. If you don't have a window that they can reach, you can give them a mirror. These kinds of activities will engage your youngest child while your older children are engaged in work, and that it's going to feed them and offer them very important life skills. I firmly believe that the job of the young toddler is to indeed figure out how the world works and how they work in the world. My youngest is 9.5, and when he was just 2 years old, for about 2 weeks, every day when we walked into our garage, and he's excitable. He has so much energy. He's incredibly smart and always busy. He's very sensitive. But we would walk into the garage every day, and I'm in a rush. It's time for me to get inside, make dinner, and he would just stop and watch the garage close. Now that doesn't take very long, but I'm in a rush, so if it's about me, that extra minute was making me impatient. I was like, come on, let's go. But I never vocalized that. Instead, I started watching him, and he would stand there and wait for the garage for me to get to the door, and I would press the button, and he would just stand and watch the garage door move, and he would look up at the mechanism that lit up and would have the garage door close. And until it actually closed, then he would turn and he'd walk in as if nothing had happened. There was no time lost for him. And I didn't mention it. I stopped talking about it. I stopped worrying about it. I began to expect it, and added that extra, it wasn't even a minute, what does it take, 12 seconds for the garage to close fully before we walked inside. I would have said he never paid any attention to me. What I wasn't aware of was that he was probably paying attention to me for a while. I was pressing a button, and somehow the garage was closing, and the two seemingly didn't connect. He couldn't see those wires. He didn't have an understanding of electronics and all of that great stuff. So he watched me probably for a long while, and then he started watching the reaction, which is the garage door closing. After 2 weeks of this every single day, without fail, multiple times a day, if we were closing that garage, one day he didn't stop, and instead he came to me and he asked me to lift him up. And he pressed the button, he watched the garage close, he nodded his head, and he never had to do that again. It was all good. It was satisfied. He figured out the button and the garage closing. And that's work. So giving the young toddler work to do to figure out how the world works, whether it is, probably don't want them necessarily playing with the garage, but if it's things like cleaning a window or pouring water back and forth, opening and closing containers, finding a strainer and just putting toothpicks in the little holes. These types of activities develop fine motor skills for them, concentration for them, and it is their real work. They see us doing certain things and they want to replicate it. They see the world around them working and they're curious. They need to discover it. They can't be successful in the world until they gain that independence and that mastery of what they see as very fundamental life skills. They must be important if we're doing them. So giving that child that work while your older children are actually in their classrooms or doing the work content from their schools is going to aid everybody. Again, spending time outside and letting them just move and run and explore and discover, you're going to have to make adaptations to your work, but that's going to engage them in gross motor while, again, providing opportunities to separate them from the older children that are working. If you have two children that are working together or in different classrooms and both are working on the same type of platform, again, reassess and look what are the goals of the program. For us, we have many siblings that are both in the primary classroom, but they're in two different classrooms. And initially there was a need and there was a want for each child to be in with their own guides classroom community, Zoom community. We began encouraging the families to allow the children to work together. It wasn't quite so important to be with their own particular guides. Instead, it was important to allow them to feel connected and engaged and to experience the presentations that we were offering them so that they would have work when Zoom time was done available to them to continue their independent explorations. So it's been very helpful for many families to choose one of the classrooms versus the other because our guides have all been working as a team and they're providing the same curriculum content as an overall group presentations for their classrooms. So that has also been beneficial versus trying to run from one room in the home to the other to assist the children. If it's more academic content, assess how much your children need you and versus how much they want you, and find a way to satisfy the need for them of want, or to separate between need and want. Wanting you by their side is valid. They are at home. Things aren't the same. They are not in school. We invited our parents to stop calling it school because they recognized the children were vocalizing, our youngest children, that's not school. That's not my Miss Judy. That's not my Miss Sarah. They were vocalizing that, and we urged them to, one, acknowledge that with their children and say, you're right, it's not school. Miss Judy's at her home, you're at your home, but she wanted to share exciting things with you today. So acknowledge their feelings about it and their need to have you because they know this isn't the same. It is different, it doesn't feel right, and they feel a little bit lost and therefore do have a need for you. And so that wanting you there is a need socially or emotionally. Then you want to assess the academic need. When is it that they actually need you versus that want. And if you can distinguish between the two, you may be able to satisfy the need for want when they're not doing their schoolwork, and instead make sure you're giving them moments when we're outside of school and in our family life where you are feeding that need and providing very specific connections that let them know I'm here and things are okay. Encourage them to talk to you about those feelings. They may not be able to. My son has been very emotional, my older son, and the other day I said, you are angry. And he said, yeah. I'm like, what are you angry about? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, are you angry that you're not in school? No. Are you angry about how much work you have? No. Are you angry about this? No. I'm like, then what are you angry about? I don't know. He's 12. He's an adolescent. He doesn't know. They don't know how to express it. And what's scarier than having intense feelings and not fully understanding them? Whether it's anger, whether it's anxiousness, whether it's sadness, whether it's excitement. When you can't attribute what's causing those strong feelings, it feels even more uncertain and they feel less in control. So you want to have those conversations with them and satisfy their need of you, of time spent with you, because it's probably attributed to the uniqueness of the situation that's going on. Then you want to assess need for schoolwork. What is it they actually need from you? These are really capable children, and they are indeed still being guided by amazing guides and teachers from whatever schools they're in. And they probably have enough in that direction for academics. So rather than needing to be with them the entire time and trying to do for them to assist them in their work, instead assist them in their confidence of being able to explore and problem solve it, which is the true goal of exploration in academics, is that problem solving and finding the solutions, and let them know that they can come to you if they need you. And then I always urge, rather than teaching them through something again that their teacher or guide might have already done, instead ask questions. What do you think the question is asking? How do you think you would solve it? And then guide them toward that versus having all the answers for them. If you have the answers for them so that the work can be more easy, I guess, for them, so they can seemingly appear to complete the work with more ease, then they're going to continue to rely on you and need you more in the academic work that they're doing. If instead you start giving them the prompting tools that reminds them that they have the answer and commend them on that, yep, your thinking brain is pretty amazing. Oh, you figured it out. That was a great solution. That's what I think I would do too. And that gives them the assurance that they're on the right track. They will need you less for the teaching, and instead they'll come and get you when they either one, want reassurance, or two, for some coaching so that they can develop more and more problem-solving skills so that they can find their answers. That's going to free you up again for that younger child or for your work, the work that you might have to do, whether it is taking care of the house, making dinner, or hopping on your own conference call for work, or completing any number of projects that you have. That's going to free you up, and it's also going to give them an amazing feeling of independence and confidence in themselves, of their capability with their schoolwork and their ability to work towards mastery. I strongly suggest that. You will find that your children are more capable than you would have imagined, and even more beautiful than that, they will develop that confidence where they find themselves more capable than they imagine. And they say really great things like, I'm really good at math. I'm like, yes, buddy, you are. You're really good at math. And what he really is really good at problem solving and reasoning it out and working towards the solutions. And it may not be 100%, but he's absolutely then thinking about it versus waiting for somebody to give it to him and spoon feed him essentially it. So those are the best practices I would recommend for finding that balance between working with your children that have schoolwork and your children that do not. And with multiple children, it is tough. We finally found that rhythm with my children, and we have a few weeks more to go before school is out. And they have become very independent, confident, and proud. My son is very excited, and he was really resistant at the beginning. He definitely needed me. He wasn't picking up that pencil. He wasn't turning on that tablet if I wasn't sitting next to him. And at the beginning, I kept saying things like, "Buddy, you did it all without me. I just sat here." And he's like, "Yeah, but that helped." And those are real words. Those are real feelings. That's a real expression. And it did help. Me being there for a little while gave him the security and the confidence in himself. And now he's doing it on his own. Last night he came down at 10:30 and he said, "Can I get started on tomorrow's homework before I go to bed?" Yup. How about 30 minutes and then go to bed? And he's like, "Okay." I'm like, "No problem." And that's a pretty amazing thing for the child that 4 weeks ago refused to turn on his tablet. And that it goes a long way, and it will transcend beyond this current crisis that we're dealing with. The next thing we wanted to discuss was the excitable child. That's how it was referred to, a child with a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. And I took a few notes, and I'm just going to pull some of them up for you so that I don't miss anything that I wanted to share. First and foremost, I think we want to revisit what it means. A challenging child, an excitable child, an overly energetic child, are those super fair titles for them? They are eager. They have a ton of energy. They are constantly exploring. Once they have language, they're constantly questioning. They're beautiful character traits, and they're traits that can channel into the shaping of a pretty extraordinary adult human. And we want to make sure that it's not considered a negative. However, the challenge isn't on the child. There is a challenge, but it's not on the child. The challenge is on us as adults. As parents, it can be challenging for us in raising those children. And recognizing that and making the distinction of it being a challenging child or a challenging situation for us is going to better equip us to work with them and help them channel their energy, because that energy is beautiful. The strong-willed child, you don't want to quench that spirit. It's a spirit. It's a spirit of determination, of inquisitiveness. There's an energy that I would love to channel, and we want to celebrate that while guiding it so that it's at its most productive for himself, for your family community, and ultimately for who he's shaping himself to become as an adult human. So we want to re-examine what we're looking at when we talk about that energetic or excitable child. I'd like to remind you that all children have these beautiful brains. They're really quite extraordinary. Every child, every brain, regardless of its capacity, is really, really beautiful. But that energetic, busy, spirited child, that's a character trait of a child with a very, very high intelligence. And we actually want to foster it. But again, it has to be productive for them as well as for your whole family community. So that's where the challenge comes in. How do you support him or her and guide them into their best self, celebrating their amazing character traits while cultivating the skills within them and allowing who they are and those amazing and larger than life characteristics that sometimes overwhelm your family to be more productive for the whole family as well as for themselves and who they're shaping themselves to be. So when we talk about the energy, rather than energy, I like to call it a spirit. And to have a spirit that is so strong and is so magnetic is beautiful. So let's look at it that way. They have a lot of energy and they need to move. That's really, really important. But as we discussed yesterday, sometimes in the movement of going, that they often miss what it is that they're seeking. So how do you satisfy that spirit and give them opportunities to let it out, while also helping them to channel it so that it's really productive, and that spirit and that energy can then be focused on an amazing exploration and an achievement. So you want to be able to, one, celebrate it and give opportunities that absolutely allow them to let out so much of what is inside of them, and also give them activities and challenges that celebrate or allow them to develop a focus, to use that spirit, to use that energy for amazing discoveries for themselves. So you really want to balance it. That curiosity about the world, that physical energy, is one of the best gifts of childhood. And yes, some of our spirited children have more of it, but it is still an amazing gift. So we want to be able to challenge it and think, how can we use it? It might be engaging them in sports. Right now we're in a stay-at-home order, so you can't get them into karate or soccer or whatnot currently, but you can go outside. You can have races and games, or just free exploration. Scavenger hunts outdoors are the greatest thing. See if you can run as fast as you can, and while running still collect blah, blah, blah. Or in channeling and focusing their energy, the next scavenger might be tiptoeing. So we're going to tiptoe through the yard and see if we can find 10 blue flowers. And you're giving him opportunity to move while also practicing a control of his body to get him everywhere he needs to go. And he starts discovering there's certain ways when I moved slower, I found more flowers and faster. But when I moved fast, it took me longer, because he was searching, right? And so giving those kinds of creative activities and creative movements is going to benefit them and you, because it might take 10 minutes to find all of the blue flowers. Then they come back and you send them for another, but they're moving, and we're not giving them an unreasonable constraint. We're giving them the necessary outlet. Persistence. These young, energetic children, these spirited children, have persistence in spades. They are intelligent, they have a vision, they know what it is they want or what they want to discuss, and they will keep at it. That can be challenging for us. It's not a challenging character trait, because again, as they grow up, that persistence is going to serve them well. They're not going to be quitters. They are going to find new and exciting things to discover, and they're going to complete it. They won't give up when they have a challenge. They'll continue through. It's an amazing character trait. But as parents, as guides, it can be challenging for us. How do we challenge that? And so we want to focus on that. So with that persistence, we sometimes want to set boundaries, and sometimes we simply say, I know you have a lot to say or you have an idea, but go back to that boundary setting with them. And again, this is for a 2-year-old as well as for an 18-year-old. That persistence is a gift, but it has to be challenged. It has to be channeled, and it has to be refined for them to use it to their most maximum effort and ability for success. And oftentimes the same tool that can be a hindrance is actually a positive that can take you so far. It's just shaping that tool. If you use a hammer on a screw, it's not going to go in, right? If you use the screwdriver, it would. But if you use that hammer on a nail, it's the perfect tool. So you want to look at that hammer and think, when are you going to use it? It's the same thing. How are you going to use it? It's going to be an effective tool. So these character traits of our spirited children are effective tools. We want to help them use them in effective ways so that they can grow into their best potential. They're sensitive. These little busy guys that when you want to bring them in and spend cuddle time with them, are ready to go, right? And they never have time. They don't sit still often. They're always busy. But they're also very sensitive, and that can be challenging for us, again, as adults. Their sensitivity is a beautiful thing. It means that they have a deeper and stronger awareness of the world, and when they're younger, that sensitivity is more internal. The sensitivity is, some might call it selfish. It's about them. And that is okay. Once they start to understand who they are and what their sensitivities are, they become better equipped to the tools that they need to develop, or the boundaries for themselves, so that they can handle their sensitivity or reduce their sensitivity. Sometimes that sensitivity is with emotions, and sometimes that sensitivity is just with the physical environment. My youngest is a sensory kid, and he was very sensitive to sound. And so whether it was the shower turning on, he wouldn't take showers. It was only baths, because the water hitting against the tiles was just too loud for his ears. And he never knew how to express that. Instead, he just started resisting showers. I was like, buddy, you got to be clean, right? But he was resisting showers. One day I was looking at him as he's crying, saying, I'm not taking a shower, and he's running around the house. And I stopped to see, why am I feeling challenged? Moved myself out of that for a moment, and instead to look to see what was his challenge in that moment. And while he was running, and while he was screaming, and while he was seemingly making my life difficult in resisting these showers that we had always taken, I noticed that even as he was running and screaming and jumping over things and climbing on the couch and not allowing me to catch him, he was covering his ears. And that was my first indication that it was the noise of the shower that really bothered him. He started the same thing with when I cooked. He was so demanding, it seemed like, and pulling me away from the stove and asking me to watch TV or play a game or build with his magnets. And this is at 2 years old. Like, what's going on? Can the boy sit so I can make him dinner? And one day he came up to me and he said, are you going to cook right now? Before I had started, but I was in the kitchen. And I said, I am going to cook right now. And he says, are you going to make the loud noises? And I said, like the pots and pans? And he says, no, but like the loud ones, like the ones that like sound like, pss, pss, pss. And he was talking about frying. Because when he didn't expect that I was frying, the sound of food sizzling on the stovetop really was electric for him. It really bothered his ears. So he started to ask me. He started to develop the cues that when I went into the kitchen and stood by the stove, when he heard the first pot come out, that he might need to prepare himself for a loud noise. And once he began preparing himself for that loud noise, he didn't have to be as sensitive to it, because he was prepared for it. And in preparation of a sensory overload or onslaught, it doesn't feel so strong, because he's now in control. He's prepared his body and knows it's coming. So that unexpectedness is what bothered him, not the noise in and of itself. It felt like a slam, but if he knew it was coming, it was still loud, but he was prepared. So he's sensitive, and he still is today, but he's begun to develop the tools. But it took me a moment, a few really, to stop worrying about the challenge he was giving me on trying to take a shower, into what was challenging him about the shower. And recognizing it's not that he was being challenging, it's that I felt challenged. And then I was able to address what was going on for him. And that opened up a dialogue, which is how he got to his own point of reference with cooking, because those were the two main times where it bothered him, where the noise in our household bothered him the most, where we had either the most demanding or the most resistance, and both interpreted itself as real busyness. So that child being sensitive, we want to recognize it, and recognize it's a challenge for us, and it's also a challenge for him. The behavior exhibiting from that sensitivity is a result of the sensitivity, and the challenge for them is that sensitivity. It is that they feel more, and so we want to give them those tools and recognize them as well. I'm going to go to my next list item. I will say with that and sensitivity that I'll point out, sometimes it's interpreted in weird ways that you wouldn't even imagine. It might be shirts with tags or socks that are too tight, things that are sensitive to their bodies. And you're not being indulgent by changing the brand of socks. Just as if they had a skin sensitivity and you saw a rash, so you would change your detergent, so too do you want to be sensitive to their sensitivity. And if they're saying socks are too tight or a certain fabric is uncomfortable, you do want to respect that because that's real. And when we pay attention to those sensitivities and make accommodations to fabrics or elastics, then they have less emotive energy and they have less resistance as well. So you would for sure change the fabric softener or the detergent if their clothes gave them a rash. So too would you want to certainly change a type of sock if he's saying it is constricting or doesn't feel good on his feet. Or if he's taking it off every single time. How come he always takes off the Adidas socks, but he never takes off the blue school socks? Why is that? It's not about socks then, right? They can't vocalize it often. They don't know to say it, just as my older son doesn't know how to express why he's angry. He's angry, but he doesn't know why he's angry. It's the same thing. Sometimes they don't know how to explain it. There's these socks I don't want on my feet. And it seems unreasonable. It feels like a challenge to us, but when we step past it and try to understand what the challenge for them is, then we can aid them with their sensitivity. Again, bringing down some of that energy so that they can be comfortable and can use their amazing other skills productively. Understanding that these busy children, these spirited children, are resistant to change. That is a beautiful thing. Children that are resistant to change, ultimately, when we guide them to an understanding of change or when to expect change or how to prepare for change, are going to develop in their adulthood, through their childhood and adolescence. They're going to develop an amazing ability for planning. And those strong planning skills are going to aid them as they become older elementary and adolescent students and planning out their days and their classes and the semester changes and things like that. But also as they grow up into adults, those planning skills are going to be amazing tools. And so being resistant to change is, again, a challenge for us. When we recognize that, then we put into place certain things that are going to aid them in understanding what and why something is happening. If your 2-year-old, who's usually home in the mornings for 3 or 4 hours a day by himself while his older siblings are at school, now has to, for some reason, curtail his energy and his running around and his explorations and his attention that he gets from you or whoever the caregiver is at home with him, that changes because now the siblings are there. They don't understand that. It doesn't make sense to them. Yes, they're there, but my life is still the same. I'm still exactly where I was. I still should get to do these things. So they have to be prepared for that change. In preparing them for the change, they will have less reaction and there will be less resistance. Therefore, there will be less combative situations that have you stressed as well as everybody in your household stressed. So always preparing for change. And it's not quite enough to just say, in 5 minutes we're leaving as a preparation, or in 5 minutes it's dinner. Sometimes it is sitting down with them and taking that 5 minutes to begin engaging with them about what the change is about to occur and separating them from what it is that they were working on. So, for example, it was great advice. I wish I could remember where I had heard it. This was a year or two ago, but they talked about when your child is watching TV and you can give them that 5-minute warning, but they're fixated on that screen. They're watching that 30 minutes that you allotted before bedtime, and then you're calling 5 minutes to bed. but they're still engaged and they're kind of doing a but they're still engaged. The advice that was given that I took to heart was, at that 5 minutes, I went and sat down with him. My arm went around him, and I started engaging him on the show that he was watching. And he's starting to pay attention to the show and me. So the abruptness of, after that 5 minutes is done, to get up and go to bed, no longer feels abrupt, because his attention has now been split, and he's already engaged with me, and therefore more receptive to going to where I'm asking him to go in this situation I'm describing, bed. I cannot believe the difference that 5 minutes made every day for the past couple of years with my child, with all of my children, really. And so it could be moving from homework into dinner, or it could be from playing a game on the Xbox, if you do that, whatever it is, but to enter their world for a little bit in engagement versus just in offering the stop sign that says we're leaving, we're stopping, things like that. But to actually enter their world for a few moments gives you some beautiful one-on-one time that will be more treasured than you know. And it will allow them to be less resistant to the change that you're asking of them, whether it's change in a moment or change in an entire situation. It's a real connection and preparation that will aid them long term. We talked a lot about their intensity as we discussed other things. These are intense children. They are very intelligent. They see and feel things so strongly. They have so much energy. They have a need to move that is larger than the average child or person, and they do everything with an intensity. That intensity can be exhausting to us. Doesn't exhaust them. They can keep going from the time they wake up till the end of the day. I would love to have some of that energy and intensity. That intensity also interprets beyond energy into the way they explore. So everything is a conversation. Everything is a full dive in. And it is centered around them. And that can be exhausting for us. So recognizing their intensity and building boundaries around that intensity for them is very beneficial. I say things to my child, he's a builder, and it doesn't matter what he's building, he gets fully involved in it, and it could be on Roblox or some kind of car building app. But when he moves those things, it makes me dizzy. I probably was a sensory kid, I don't know, but it absolutely makes me dizzy. And I can only watch it for about 12 seconds. And so I started explaining that. I did want to share in his excitement, but that excitement would go on for 20 minutes. I mean, the intensity of describing what it is he's building, showing me every little facet of it, is going and going and going, whether it's a live model or it's on a screen. He's building it, he's showing it to me, and my head's kind of spinning, and I have other things that I need to be working on, and I don't understand it. So I'm really looking at him, and I started to vocalize and say, thank you so much for sharing. And I probably use, for sure, because my language, I use a lot of large language with my children, but I say, oh, you are so intense while you're working. I'm going to let you do it and show me the final project, or come and get me if you have a question. And I'm celebrating and I'm allowing him to have it, but I'm not getting consumed by it, because the intensity is his excitement for what it is he's doing, and it's a beautiful thing. Whether that intensity is in an exploration or in an explanation, we can still give boundaries around it without quenching that spirit or that excitement of that intensity, while preventing ourselves from drowning inside of it or getting overly consumed and not being able to give attention to either the other children or to our work or other responsibilities that we might have. So celebrate the intensity, but help them channel it and help them understand that the intensity belongs to them and it's an extraordinary thing for them, while giving yourself the ability to step out and away from it a little bit. When that intensity comes from frustration, you again want to give them those strategies. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but when that intensity interprets itself in frustration because something's not working out or you've put a limitation, you want to give them the tools to relax the intensity. And language goes a long way. What also helps for my child and for children, a variety of children, hundreds of children over my 25 years of experience, is a connection and a physical touch. And I call them hand hugs. We learned this years and years ago from my son's occupational therapist, and those hand hugs provide a pressure that helps to calm the body, just in and of itself. Whether your child is sensory or not, a soothing back rub or a little pat or giving those hand hugs down their arm really helps them to unclench themselves from the tightness of that intensity, of that fury or that rage, because they feel it so strongly, and because they're sensitive. And so they feel it more strongly than we might. And for something seemingly small, it comes out really big. So when they're feeling really intense, when they feel like they're being blocked and they're upset, that fury, first and foremost, help their body relax and then communicate through it. Just because they're feeling intense or frustrated doesn't mean we have to give in. That gives them an unsuccessful measure of control. And they're very intelligent. They will begin to use that control and begin manipulating situations, and that is not a successful form of control. So being firm in those boundaries, helping them cope with the physical of their frustration first, when you relax your body, and then to communicate their frustration and revisit the boundaries behind what it is you're asking them, you will find yourself experiencing less of those intense situations. You'll experience them less often, and they will last for shorter periods of time. In going with that, I think I kind of talked about it, is they always have to have the last word. And I think that confidence and that language that they have cultivated, the skill of using language, is again a beautiful thing. We want that in our adulthood, but there's a respectfulness in communication, and sometimes it's just respecting them enough to share that. And I use words very simply with my children when they are always needing the last word in, that says, I heard your words, and I want to know that you hear mine as well. My opinions are just as important. I've sometimes told my children things like, you have great opinions, you have great ideas, they're very important, but they're not more important than anybody else's in the world. They are as important, they can be very creative, they can be unique, and they can definitely be different than everybody else in the world. But my children need to know that their words aren't more important. And that takes you to dealing with, you always have to have the last word. They don't necessarily at that point, because you get to teach and model that communication. So that's just a little bit on the frustrating, what we feel as challenging for the children. But it all interprets itself when you think of each of those different character traits in the spirited child. All of them are beautiful character traits, and all of them need to be shaped and guided so that the child can control them in a way that allows him to maintain those character traits, and form himself into an unbelievable, or herself into an unbelievable human that can really make an impact on the world. To minimize the impact in your household and on you is the work of the adult in helping to shape with guidelines and support, and helping him recognize or her recognize what those character traits are, and when they're used so amazingly and successfully, offering them outlets for their energy and parameters for working positively in a whole family environment and giving them challenging activities and work to do is what is going to help them channel these amazing spirited character traits into a really phenomenal and enjoyable child that you have better tools of enjoying and working with and helping them through the challenging times. That's it for today. I really appreciate that you were here with me. I hope I answered those well enough. If there's something that I missed, or with all of that information, if that brings up another question for you, please post in the comments any ideas or requests or questions that you might have, or if you have something else that you would like us to discuss, send it in the comments. You can send me a private a direct message on Facebook, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Please feel free to share this with anybody or any groups that you think will benefit from this information. We hope you all stay safe, stay well, and stay healthy during this time. We miss you and we love you, and we will see you soon. Bye, everybody.